information that's at a much deeper level in the structure of space. And so that in some ways it acts like a very advanced, very, very complex computing system. The holographic principle kind of starts touching on this, but not in the concept of a computer necessarily we have here. It would be something much more complex, like a quantum computer. Is that you get trends and you get a certain amount of attachment to certain ideas, and then eventually in history, certain ideas are picked based on this, maybe some of the data that's being gathered at the time that seems to indicate that one idea is more valid than another, but then later on new data comes in and that kind of contradicts some of the ideas that were picked earlier. So there was a lot of debate, and this is not very well known at this time, is that there was a lot of debate earlier on about the Big Bang Theory. There was a very large portion of the scientific community that thought that the concept was preposterous, and that didn't agree with it at all. And one of the most vocal persons might be Sir Fred Hoyle, that had a continuous creation process that was very valid, that had a lot of very strong points to support it. And as I said, even Einstein, as we discovered about a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, when we found this lost paper from Einstein that had been kind of misplaced in a university library, Einstein himself contemplated a continuous creation process in the universe in which protons were emerging from the vacuum, and that our universe was losing the same amount of protons that were being created within it. So it was a continuous steady state universe. So those ideas have been there a long time. It's just that now we're getting in a place where we have more data and more scientific or theoretical tools to understand at the deeper level some of the most fundamental functions of quantum theory and how quantum theory interacts with cosmology, and so quantum cosmology is developing very quickly now, and so on. And so all of a sudden the picture is changing again, and the data that we're getting is telling us that we don't have the complete picture. And so now it's kind of re-emerging that, maybe this continuous steady-state universe might be an acceptable thing to explore, and now new solutions are being found. Some of which I had found myself. I'm actually in the middle of finishing a cosmological paper with Dr. Amira Val-Baker from England on the very concept of a steady-state universe. Well, it all depends on data, really. As we get more and more data, and as we discover at the deeper level, and it may be data from cosmological experiment, but as well from, laboratory experiment here, we may find that this is supportive of that view, and if it is, then in general, it takes time. However, eventually, hopefully, the mainstream scientific community will come around.
Well, unified physics has to do with our capacity to understand the universe as a whole, from the biggest stuff to the smallest stuff. And, currently, the standard views of physics have been split in the middle. We have a theory for the big stuff, Einstein field equation, that deals with gravity and large objects with like stars and galaxy and universal size things. And we have a theory for the very small stuff, quantum theory, that tells us about the atom and the subatomic particles, and the two don't agree. And since Einstein, Einstein spent the rest of his life after writing Relativity trying to find a solution that would actually incorporate the two into a whole theory that, since big things are made out of small things, there must be a theoretical framework, an understanding of the mechanics that makes the whole thing works together. And I think we're really getting close now. I think that it can't, this few things. One of the reasons why it's really important is because if you look in history, you find that every big breakthrough in our understanding of the universe, the mechanics of how things work, has brought on really incredible transformation in our technological developments. And so, of course, if a unified geophysics emerged, and as it is emerging right now, showing that there is this fundamental field of information that kind of links with what you were talking about earlier, George. It has the possibility to really transform our world, and it will be proven in the sense that we will be able to develop technologies that at least support that this is a new, at least better level of understanding of the physics of the universe. Maybe we won't understand the whole thing completely till the end, which we'll probably never do, but we may understand it at a deeper level and have a better understanding of how we're here and how the universe around us work, which is like so critical to our world and to our capacity to survive some of the largest issues that our society faces today. You just can't get like incredible complexity like we see all around us. A human being with 100 trillion cells, with billions of chemical changes happening every minute. And recently I was writing a paper that is unpublished, but with a biologist, William Brown, and we were calculating some of the most fundamental functions necessary for even just one, single cell organism to come about, and the probabilities of it coming about under random function, just under just things bumping together and maybe working or maybe not, was 10 to the 8,896 possibilities. The age of the universe doesn't even come close to that, meaning like the radius of the universe, for instance, in centimeters, the universe is really, really big, and that number is like 10 to the 28. So imagine a number that's 10 to the 8,800 and something. It is just incredible. Probabilities that it wouldn't happen are really, really high. And so the fact that this is occurring, and it's occurring every day, and we see it happen, it tells you that there's something deeper than just random things just bumping around and kind of organizing under random functions. And so the tendency is to say, well, there must be some organizing factor. There must be some organizing agent, and it's absolutely correct. I think that the organizing agent is this function in which information is learning about itself. And if I was to give an example, I think one of the best examples that was given by Fred Hoyle on this was somebody trying to order a Rubik's Cube. And if the person is blind, they don't know if they're getting closer or further from the solution. And if they move one move every second, right, you can calculate the number of probabilities they would have to go through for the Rubik's Cube to somehow miraculously just order itself. And when you calculate that, it exceeds the time. If they're making a move every second, it exceeds the time since the beginning of the universe, which is 13.7 billion years, by billions and billions of years. So like the probability of the person ordering the cube by random chance is really, really low. But if you just tell the person yes or no, just a simple prompt, whenever they make a move, if there's just a little bit of a feedback, whenever they make a move, then all of a sudden the Rubik's Cube will be ordered within 2 to 2.5 minutes. So it's a huge difference. How fast things can become much more complex and self-organize and create very incredible things we see all around us that's miraculous. And so I think that the whole thing is learning about itself. The whole thing is alive. It's this incredible feedback of information, and it you know, you could call it God. You could call it like, you know, intelligent design because it's intelligent. It's learning about itself, and we're evidence that intelligence is present, right? There's actually currently in the theoretical constructs we use, like Einstein field equations, in some cases, inclusions for this. There is a possibility, absolutely, that we could manipulate time by using very large amount of energy in the structure of space and warping the space to create time distortions. And I mean, the sky is the limit when we're able to do that. And there's very much possibilities that civilizations that may be much more advanced than us in the universe have succeeded in doing this very manipulation of space and time, and are not only able to warp time and travel in time, but as well warp space and travel in space very, very large distances that are even incredibly inconvenient to traverse even at the speed of light. But if you can control time and can control space, you can travel across the universe in an instant. And that might have been achieved by very advanced civilization. And there's no preclusion of it in the current theoretical construct that's in physics. So physics actually predicts that it's possible. You know, it's hard to visualize. Maybe think of it as information, and this is the way I think of it just because of some of the physics I've written in unification theory, that time is really information on the structure of space. So think maybe as the movement of the Earth is going through space, because our sun is moving through the galaxy, and as we're spiraling through space, think of it as like we're leaving information on the structure of space, and we call that the past. And so imagine that all of a sudden you could retrieve that information, or recreate that past by interacting with the information that's present in the space. Then you could alter that information, and that would change the information forward from that moment. Thus, it would change the future based on that moment in time, and change the present and change the future from that present as well. So there is very much possibility that this can be done, and like I said, even in standard model of physics, it's not precluded from Einstein field equations. The Resonance Project is something I founded some 15 years ago that has to do with bringing together interdisciplinary scientists to try to elucidate this unified field theory, to bring cosmologists and quantum physicists and biologists and all these different fields of science together, and to try to hammer out a theory in which all these fields are connected and we have a continuous understanding of how things work, not so separate from each other. Like, how does biology emerge out of the physics of our universe? Currently, that's unknown. They're not compatible. As I was saying before, our physics doesn't predict that biology should emerge at all, and so on. So the Resonance Project Foundation is a nonprofit research foundation that's attempting to bring this whole view of the physics and the science of our universe together.
Is it working?
It is. It is. We have an incredible group of people working together. We've published very significant papers, and some of the predictions we did in the latest paper are very significant because they were measured in an accelerator in Switzerland, and we happen to have the most accurate prediction of the radius of the proton, the nuclei of an atom, that's currently present on the planet in our theoretical construct. So that really supports the fact that the theory that we're bringing forward is actually correct, and not only correct, but extremely accurate. And what's really cool about that theory is that it says the universe is one thing. It says the universe, that you can't separate anything out of the universe, that everything is talking with everything. And when you calculate the mass of an atom or a proton in the nuclei of an atom, you have to actually consider all the rest of the protons in the universe. I'm pretty restricted though, because I'm doing so much work in laboratory right now. So I've only done a few conferences this year. One of them being the Conscious Life Expo. Yep. That was wonderful. And I have a few more. I have a tour going this summer across Canada. That'll be really wonderful. And, some stuff is being prepared for Europe, and we have a movie coming out that's being produced independently by a movie maker, Malcolm Carter, called The Connected Universe, and that's really exciting.
What do you think of Stephen Hawking?
Stephen has done incredible work throughout the years, especially early on when he was working on black hole theory, his contribution is significant. At this time, there's so much incredible stuff coming out from so many different sources, and as you were pointing out earlier, some of the new theories that are emerging are remarkable, and they kind of like tweak our mind. I don't know about you, but it definitely is like forcing us to transcend some of the old concepts and really kind of open up to new ideas. It's really exciting what's going on in physics right now, and in the technological application of these new theories. There's technology coming our way that's going to be so incredible. It's so mind-blowing. I was fascinated with science, but more so I was fascinated with nature, with the way nature works. I loved being in nature, being in the woods, by myself, listening to the silence and looking at, I was in Canada, so I often looked at snow crystals and the structure of them and the structure of branches in the trees and the way the bark grows on a tree and all this. And everywhere I looked, I could see this pattern, this fundamental structure that seemed to be present everywhere. I felt like there was something really mysterious there that I wanted to discover, and that's really what launched me into trying to figure it out, and really for myself. It wasn't to go out there and talk about it or any of I just wanted to understand.
You know, Stephen Hawking said that artificial intelligence could be a danger to us. Elon Musk, of course, Tesla Motors, SpaceX, Space One. He says, too, that you have to be careful of artificial intelligence, that if it gets smarter than us, we're in trouble. What do you think?
Yeah, I kind of differ on those opinions. I think that we're much further than we think in getting anything to have like a sentient intelligence. I think it's much more complex than what we think it is. We may get there. I just don't think it's for very soon. We might get things to start acting more and more like a sentient being, like a human being, and so on, but it will still be much lower in its capacity to produce cognitive thoughts and so on, until we really kind of transcend the way we're thinking about what is life and what is consciousness and how the universe works.
Okay, let's go to the phones now. Let's go to Nick in Sydney, Australia on the international line. Hey, Nick, down under. Good to have you with us.
How are you?
Good, Nick.
Hello.
Thank you.
Hi, Nassim.
Hello.
Hi. I love your work, brother. I just listened to Jamie Janover a few days ago here in Sydney, spreading your work. That was awesome.
Great. How is it down there, down under?
Oh, it's great. It's great. The weather's good, up and down, up and down. I met you in Queensland year before last when you came out to Hamilton Island to speak to some high-level people up there, and that were a very interesting talk. I loved it. I'm a contributing member too. Love your work. Really want to teach it in the future. But what I want to ask, I love what you do, and it just sounds so logical and reasonable when you present it. What I'm really curious to know is what other people who are pushing against your theories, like those who are skeptical or who are fighting you, so to speak, what are they actually bringing up that you might be going, oh, actually, because I'm curious, because it makes so much sense what you're saying. What could a physicist be presenting to you where you've gone, actually, that is valid. I don't really know the answer to that. I'll go away and get it. What do they have?
Well, that's a really good question. It's been a long journey. It's normal that when you bring a new theory out, that you encounter resistance, and in some ways it's healthy. Like you're saying, some of the stuff they're questioning about my theory is forcing me to actually think deeper and find deeper understanding and solutions, and make sure that all my mathematics add up and all this stuff. And at the same time, it can be really discouraging because you're going at it. I mean, I've been going at it for some 25, 30 years now. And, it takes a lot of determination and courage to keep going, because sometimes it can be discouraging. It can be really complex. And one of the things that's really hard for other physicists to comprehend out of the theory that I'm writing is this idea that systems cannot be isolated, that they're in relationship with each other, and that we need to write physics in a way that we consider the relationship of things, and that this relationship between things is actually the result of this underlying field of energy, this underlying field of information that we call the quantum vacuum fluctuations that are present everywhere. and that until fairly recently in our history has been very controversial and all this. And so it's becoming less and less controversial. It's getting easier and easier for people to understand it. And as we were discussing with George earlier, like very big breakthroughs are occurring using or are starting to understand this fundamental energy that's present in the space between all things. And so it's starting to kind of land with the mainstream. And certainly since I made this prediction of the radius of the proton using this new generalized holographic solution to the mass of things, and that my prediction is more accurate than the standard model, it's becoming much easier, and more physicists around the world are coming to my side.
I hear that the documentary was funded, what was it, an online campaign?
Yeah, part of the documentary was funded with Indiegogo campaign online, and it was very, very successful. It was kind of remarkable. It was the most successful documentary crowdfunding campaign ever for Indiegogo. So we were really excited about that, and that shows how interested the public is and how much they're willing to get involved and support this kind of work.
Okay, let's go back to the phones. We go to Jeff in Culver City, California. Hi, Jeffrey.
Yeah, how you doing, George and
Good.
Mr. Nassim? Yes, I too never really believed that someone floating on a cloud or manifesting out of a well would suddenly come and save humanity again for the second time. But what is more intriguing and perplexing to me is how the invisible spirit that may or may not be emanating from former prophets of antiquity can be transmitted into certain chosen individuals to perhaps fulfill the continuous spirit line or religious agenda of centuries past. My question is this, Dr. Nassim. Do you think that convoluted spiritual transference, can be transmitted into certain chosen individuals to either continue the ancient spiritual line or to carry out other agendas in the present or perhaps in the future? And I'll take your answer off there.
Wow, that's a really profound question. I love it. You have such great listeners, George. I would say that you know how I was earlier talking about how time is really information in the structure of space. So if you think of information, information doesn't go away. It just it just transforms, and so it can't be lost in physics. So you could think that like the information that was present, that made up these individuals, never goes away, and that it can actually be reorganized into a new body, and so I actually think that the mechanism for reincarnation and these kind of beliefs are actually valid in terms of the kind of new physics that are emerging now, where information that makes up a person can kind of like continue beyond the physical body, because it's actually what makes the consciousness of a being is actually not the inside the body, but it's actually the information that's present in the space. So that the body is like an antenna that's tuned to a certain set of information. So why not? Why wouldn't there be another antenna that would come around that's tuned to that frequency and that's continuing that set of information throughout the ages? I think that's very plausible.
Nassim, would you agree that the primordial soup in the universe is the same everywhere?
Yeah, I would. I would say that it is. I would say that it's probably the same everywhere, and that it uses the same mechanism, that everything flows in a very specific way. That's why I think that there is actually a very fundamental flow of information that we might it might appear locally like we have free will, but actually we're kind of flowing with a universal will, if you'd like, that's going towards higher coherency and higher level of organization and so on, and we kind of being flowed along as we're learning about ourselves.
Why do people feel disconnected right now? They just aren't cohesive.
Yes, it's easy to do in our world today because we're taught that everything is separate, everything is random, that, our life don't really matter, that we don't really have an influence on anything. So people feel disconnected. Many people feel very discouraged, very depressed. Looking at our world today,
Sure.
If you're looking at the news every day at 5 o'clock, there's good reasons to be depressed. But that's the thing, is that the new physics that are emerging is telling us the exact contrary, that we're connected, that everything is connected, everything is talking, and that the universe is actually talking to us, and we're talking back to it, and that we're actually completely supported by the whole thing. We're part of this incredible will works of nature, and it's an amazing, miraculous thing. And I think that I'm very encouraged. I think that there's really a beautiful understanding of our universe that's emerging.
All right, let's go to Tyler in Alabama, east of the Rockies. Tyler, you're on the air with us. Go ahead.
Hey,
Hey.
Nassim, to start off, I like how you discussed information and how it relates to physics. What I'm asking is the Higgs particle, its discovery. What exactly does the GeV being between 125 and 140 mean for supersymmetry versus multiverse?
Right. That's a good question. Well, first of all, on the Higgs, I'd like to comment that I think that it's an overstatement to say that the Higgs has been discovered, and many other physicists would agree with me. There's actually a book out there that's called The Higgs Fake, there is a lot of controversy about that so-called discovery. The findings that were made by the Hadron Collider in Switzerland were very much on the edge of the energy levels that describe that very specific theory. And that's what you were asking about. In terms of supersymmetry, it has some very large difficulties, and supersymmetry is kind of foundational to the standard model of particle physics right now. And this is why they've got the accelerator down for 2 years and trying to repair and trying to get this thing to go back up at full power to try to identify supersymmetric contingents so that they can support the theoretical works, and it's not showing up so far. And so there's like big holes in the standard models that are emerging, including the latest measurement of the radius of the proton, which does not support the standard model. And that really tells us that there's new physics that are required to be able to really understand what's going on at the quantum level. And these new physics, in many cases, as we were discussing earlier, have to do with this field that's present, that maybe everything emerged from and everything returns to.
What do you think a black hole is, Nassim?
Okay, so a black hole, in the theoretical work I've been doing, is a little different than what you hear every day out there. It actually, and the equations I've written proves this, and it proves this with this latest measurement of the proton as well. that a black hole is actually a agglomeration, like a slur of this information rotating in a region of space. So you think of space as a fluid of energy, and then think that in that fluid there's eddies that forms, and where the eddy is really strong, like a hurricane, like a tornado, then we call it a black hole. And if we calculate how this fluid is behaving in this vortex, in this spinning vortex, as I did, you get the exact same solution that Einstein got to describe the black hole. But in this case, you get it in a way in which it's discrete bits of information all spinning together. And so you can apply it to the quantum level and gives you the right answers as well for gravity at the quantum level. And that's why it's a unified theory of physics.
Will we ever really learn the universe, Nassim?
I don't think so. I think we're always going to learn, because I think the universe is constantly evolving in this constantly deeper levels of physics to elucidate. But I think that as we learn deeper and deeper levels, it's totally transforming our society and our world. You know, like, for instance, the description of gravity I was just giving you, which is a little different than the way Einstein described it, leads directly to gravitational control, for instance, meaning that we'll be able to build devices. And you know, this is being done in laboratory as we speak. It's not like 10 generations from now. It's like in our lifetimes. We'll be able, and I'm going to make this prediction right now, maybe even in the next 2 decades, we will be able to control gravity. We will be able
All right,
to
but
levitate.
if we can control gravity, what does that mean? We'll come back and talk about that next.
Well, you know, think of it this way, George. You know, like, we've been able to control, you know, we learned eventually from the theoretical work we did in the late 1800s and early 1900s, how to control electromagnetic fields and utilize them for our civilization, electricity, lighting, you know, powering everything we use in our day-to-day life, in modern life. And deeper understanding of the physics that makes up the gravitational force will lead to the same result. We'll start to understand better how gravity works, the force that holds us to the surface, and by being able to control that force, we'll be able to reverse it so that instead of being sucked onto the surface of the planet, if you'd like, we can levitate off the surface of the planet. And I think that's actually a natural evolution of a society in the universe. And even Stephen Hawking has talked about that with great controversy, that we need to get off the surface. We need to transcend this moment in our evolution. We need to become spacefaring civilization. And we're just not going to do it with rockets. It's just not going to happen that way. It's not feasible. It's not practical. And I know that, you know, you were talking about Elon Musk earlier, and Richard Branson, and even NASA is wanting to colonize Mars and all this. Doing this with rockets is not really feasible. It would require thousands of trips, create a lot of ecological disasters every time we cross the ionosphere and make holes in our atmosphere and so on. So, you know, gravity control is right on this cusp. You know, people don't know this necessarily in the public, but some of the experiments are very successful. There's experiments in Finland, for instance, where gravity beams have been successfully created and measured to to propagate at 64 times the speed of light, where they can actually affect an object that's a kilometer and a half away, and the effect is occurring very, very, very quickly. And so, we're really, really close to it, and it will totally transform our world.
Tim, I wanted to thank you because people like you being out there and promoting what you're saying and exhibiting all of this with your humor and the way you present yourself. I grew up never really understanding mathematics the way it was taught in schools, and you're opening a door for younger people to come along behind you and do even greater things. And I wanted to thank you for that.
Oh, thank you very much. That's really touching. I appreciate it. And, that's what's exciting for me as well, is to see the younger generation and even the older generation, kind of light up when they hear this information and see a path forward, because I think there's an incredible possibility. There's an incredible transformation that's upon us in this world today, and it has to do with the really profound and deeper understanding of the physics of our world, and they're beautiful and miraculous, and when we understand them at this level, it brings a lot of joy in a lot of people's heart, and that's what keeps me going, because like the emails I get and the comments I get are just incredible, and people are really interested now, and people are well educated. They know and they feel as well what seems right and what seems not so coherent, and so on. And so there's great changes upon us now.
How much do we understand about the universe, Nassim?
Currently, I would say very little. I think we're really kind of just touching on the beginning of something so enormous, so incredible. That's probably going to transcend everything we know today pretty rapidly as we explore. I think we're on the cusp of a very big transformation in our understanding of not just the physics of the universe, but the dynamics that makes it possible for us to even be here thinking about it and pondering on it, and the life we have and how we got here and how come we have consciousness and all this. It all plays into this deeper understanding that's emerging.
Let's go to Larry in Idaho Springs, Colorado. Larry, thank you. Go ahead.
Good morning, George. Man, this is a great honor to get to talk to you.
Oh, good. Thank you.
I've been a very long listener of you and Art for a very long time. My question for your guest is, I know that the universe is ever expanding and everything is moving away from each other. And they say one of the theories is that the universe will eventually burn out, and that the only thing that will really survive are black holes. Mm-hmm. And I was wondering, from his theory, how the universe will be able to stay alive and continue.
Right. This is what we were discussing earlier, is that there's new theories that are emerging that are based on this fundamental field, or this fluid of information that's present in the space, that are showing that the universe may be much more akin to something that is continuous, that is in the continuous creation process, that actually doesn't burn out at all, that creates more and more complexity and more order, and that has this infinite potential. And so it's a completely different picture that's emerging and that's developing, in which there's not really a beginning and there's not really an end. There's just a continuum of creation that's occurring, and that's really remarkable.
Sure. We'll go to JP now in St. Louis. JP, you're on the air with us.
Good morning, George, and your guest. I love the show. It's all very fascinating. I have an observation and a question at the end.
Sure.
Okay, the observation is I often listen to the show a lot, and all these ideas and theories. It's all very fascinating, and I think God wants us to try to grow in our capacity. But really, mankind is very arrogant, and it is arrogance to think we're like an ant sitting on a brick contemplating our universe and having all these theories. It's all good and very interesting, but I think Einstein said everything's a miracle or nothing's a miracle. Now, I believe everything's a miracle. I think the Bible really explains our universe better than any book I've ever read, and that Jesus violated the laws of physics. There's a lot of strong evidence that he really violated the laws of physics, brought people back from the dead, walked on the water, told a storm to calm. He violated the laws of physics. The only reason he could do that because he wrote the laws of physics. There's laws of physics. And so, it's laughable when I hear all these things, because mankind really, this could be true, this could be, and then when he takes God out of the picture, then it elevates man to he's got this big role and he's in charge of his destiny. And so I really do think that it is all speculation, and he used multiple universes and all. It's all very fascinating, but I do think that what explains how we got here and so forth has to be a creator, and it's a miracle that we're even talking to each other, that we exist. And also, if there wasn't a God, then there couldn't possibly be a right or wrong. Murder, why would it be wrong? It's just wrong because it's wrong for us, not right for this person. So that's my observation. I'd take your comment on it, but my question is, how could your guest explain how the impossibility of everything coming from nothing?
That is the perplexing question, Nassim. Something from nothing.
Right. Well, that's the thing. It's really what's kind of emerging now. Is that there is actually never nothing. That there is always everything, and that it's constantly evolving. And I appreciate those comments from the caller about the presence of God. I don't think that the two are necessarily mutually exclusive. I'm not necessarily a religious person, and I don't necessarily adhere to the concepts of religious beliefs of God. But I don't think that they're necessarily mutually exclusive, meaning that we can understand some of the mechanics that if we want to believe in a God, that a God would have created to make the universe. And if we understand these mechanics, then we, in some ways, get closer to God. And that God might look completely different than what we first believed it would look like. And it might look like a field of energy that's, permeating everything and connecting everything and talking to everything. And so I think it's good to be able to hear both sides and kind of see if we can synergize the two into something that gets us a little deeper along the path of discovery.
Well said, Nassim. Well said. JP, thanks for your comments. Dave in Oklahoma, it's your turn, David.
Good evening, gentlemen. Mr. Nori, Mr. Nassim.
Hi.
I want to ask a question because lately I've been discovering that, we observe the outside world through sensors. Our eyes are sensors, our ears are sensors, our skin are sensors. And what happens, this is my opinion, by the way, gentlemen, what happens is our brain configures all that information into the experience that we're having. And therefore, my theory is that we are internal avatars all the time. Just like when we were dreaming, there's no difference between dreaming and experiencing the physical reality. And therefore, when we try to observe quantum material, or we come up against wave-particle duality, we are only experiencing our conscious regeneration of the physical world inside of our own mind. So how can we get to the bottom of what we're really observing if it's just a regeneration?
That's really, really an interesting approach, and it is absolutely true that this debate has been going on for a long time, and I'm actually writing on this right now. As I was talking about earlier, we're writing papers in biophysics currently to attempt to describe the event of consciousness. One thing that what you're saying is absolutely correct, and it makes absolute sense as long as you adhere to the concept, or you accept the axiom that the brain is the source of consciousness. Now, that is not necessarily the case. And what I'm saying is that the brain and the body as a whole may actually be an antenna that is receiving and transmitting information into a field. And in that case, then we're actually interacting with the field, and that field is manifesting around us as this holographic reality that we call our world. And so if we come to understand how that world works and how if we come to understand how the dynamics of that field work and interact with us and create that world, we're one step further in understanding the mechanics of our reality. Now, there may be deeper layers. There may be a hidden reality behind that we will discover later on. But at least this is a first step in discovering the dream that we may be dreaming.
Do you know Drunvalo Melchizedek at all, Nassim?
Yes, I've read some of his work, and I think there's some stuff that's valid in there. It's very esoteric, and I think there is some value there, especially in philosophical instances and spiritual development. I think something is very profound in some of the work that people are doing out there in terms of sacred, what is typically called sacred geometry.
Well, you're doing a great job too, Nassim, and thank you for being on the program.